Here's a great question. I'm sure many people can relate to this. Here we go. What advice do you have about how to gently guide or provide instruction without threatening your sensitive child's self-value? These past couple of days, I have noticed how my 5-year-old son has expressed diminished confidence around doing a few things after my husband and I have stepped in to provide instruction and follow-up. My husband, not highly sensitive, and in my opinion, often a bit gruff, husbands can be that way, reminded my son how to flush the toilet correctly. And then last night, my son, let's remember, we said, yes, 5 years old. And then last night, my son said rather sadly, after I reminded him to flush, "Will you flush? I don't know how to do it right." I am also not immune to losing my patience at times when I'm stretched and needing to remind my son to do something. And I feel like he then retreats from doing these things in the future, perhaps because of me. So this is a great question about self-value, right? This mom is concerned about her son's self-value when he's been corrected or taught something. And gosh, it's true. Sometimes we're a little too gruff or a little too rough or a little too impatient or a little too irritated. I mean, it happens, right? That's normal parenting. So what I want to say is that remember this, no one can learn when they're overstimulated. And so in the moment when something might be a little sensitive is not the time to teach or correct. So it's great if you can plan these lessons, say about flushing, that they will be done when no flushing is happening. You know, a family discussion, maybe some joking about it. You know, and I hate to say this to the mom of the 5-year-old that people with 20-year-olds might still be struggling with this issue. Not me, but you can have teenagers or any age of child that either doesn't flush or doesn't flush right, or you know how some toilets you have to hold the thing down for a long time. So this isn't uniquely 5. And I also want to say that I have a niece that I think she didn't want to go potty in a public toilet until she was 10 or 12 because, you know, those automatic flush toilets, she's sensitive, and it was so loud. It just scared her. It scared her and startled her so much. So when I was with them, I would go in the stall with her and hold my hand over the sensor and promise her that I wouldn't let it flush while she was still in there, or until she had opened the door and turned around and she could see it happening. So it's very real. I mean, we are vulnerable, especially as children. And at 5, you're still integrating your potty training. So children feel really vulnerable around potty issues. And sometimes we can feel vulnerable for a long time around them. So this is particularly a hot topic. It also addresses this issue of how do we correct and reprimand and have consequences and teach our children things, so in a way that doesn't damage their self-value. Certainly, there's usually one parent who is more gruff or more harsh than the other. Sometimes the sensitive parent or the mom might be more protective or a little too gentle, or maybe a little too hysterically reactive. I mean, I'm just talking about myself. I can go all these places in my parenting. So it's very important, first of all, when something too gruff or too harsh happens, no matter which parent does it or a teacher, that we really start to teach our children about this idea of people are different. The way people communicate is different. The way that we hear and receive communication is different. And, you know, I think it's important. My mother taught me how to interact with my dad a little bit. And, you know, partly especially as a young woman and a teenager, I was mad that I had to modulate my reactions to my dad to get along. And it really frustrated me. And on the other hand, I think it was good of my mom to say, you know, maybe try to get your dad's attention before you say something to him, rather than just talking to him when he's looking at his phone. Well, that wasn't the case when I was a child, but that might be the case now. He was looking at the newspaper. So there is some just saying, you know, the way daddy tells us things is louder, or maybe uses more strict language. And sometimes you might feel worried about it because you are listening so carefully, and that you are more aware of how people say things. It doesn't make daddy wrong or son wrong. it just means that we're different. So I think it's really important to acknowledge differences in communication, so that, because I don't know about you, I mean, this whole webinar we've been talking about being sensitive to criticism and to what other people say, and it's because of, you know, lower self-value or not ranking. And we don't have to take every single thing. You know, the more gruff communicators or direct communicators in the world, or loud communicators in the world, they don't even realize that you're receiving them or perceiving them as gruff, or that your sensitive child is. So it's very important that we're aware of differences, and that we keep making our children of any age aware that people are different. In Jan Crystal's book, The Temperament Perspective, there's a really nice description, I think 8 or 9-year-old girl, who says that her friend said something that really hurt her feelings, but she realizes, because she knows about temperament, that she's more sensitive and her friend is more fast approaching and some other temperament that's different. And so she knows that it's not personal. You know, it doesn't mean she doesn't like her. And that's what we teach our children about everybody. We want to model it, you know, just talking about different people in their lives and how they communicate, point them out. It's the same way you teach sex education, actually. I should do a whole webinar on that, right? It's an area of expertise for me. But, you know, when you see a dog humping another dog, you talk about all the different reasons that might be happening. You know, maybe it's about making babies, and maybe it's about dominance, and it's just dog behavior. It's not good, bad, or otherwise. And human behavior is human behavior, and it's not good, bad, or otherwise. And then sometimes there are people who are abusively ranking or parenting, and that is not okay. And it's really important to call that out and point that out as well. I think it's also really important on loaded topics, whatever they are in your family, that you make a family discussion that has some humor or some lightness to it, or some seriousness, but that a family discussion about, and we're using flushing the toilet here, but about whatever that hot topic is when it's not up. So let's say the older child is, let's see, what is something that's happening? Oh, yeah, this is not a hot topic, but they're just not clearing their dishes after meals and not putting them in the dishwasher. Right after the meal, you can say the reminder, but that's not when you have the big hot discussion and set consequences about it. And this is in the earlier webinar on ranking for adults, ranking and linking the undervalued self. We talked about how you plan these conversations, stage them, stage a discussion with your partner, your co-parent, about flushing the toilet, and tease each other about it and talk about it and draw the child in. So it's just a family culture thing. It's also great to plan discussions between the co-parents about different styles of communication, and to have have your husband say something gruff to you, and plan it ahead of time and make a strategy that you're going to do this and say, gosh, I feel my feelings getting hurt, but I know that you actually are just being really clear, and I'm just being sensitive, and we're both good the way we are. And, here's what I heard you say. And then reframe what they said in gentler language, and show the children how they can reframe what's being said to them with different language. So I hope this helps, and let's just keep forging along on all of this.